Gonna mess it up. All right, we're live.
Hey, we are back for the second Midwest Outdoor Experience podcast. And if you're just tuning in for the first time, welcome. I am Nathan, and here with Austin,
I'm Austin.
the two faces of Midwest Outdoor Experience. We have kind of a fun show today. Hopefully, we want to just start off. One of our sponsors for the winter series has given us some hats for us to give away. That is Hillerman and Associates Insurance
They're
has
beanies.
donated some beanies.
Got two
So
colors to choose from. You got hunter orange and black. And
yep,
these are nice hats. They're like the skins fit, they're not real bulky.
yep.
Perfect to wear while you're out fishing or doing other stuff. Just nice and slim. So we have 10 of these we can give away, 5 of each color tonight. And as we go through the podcast, you can comment. And if we know you, we'll get a hold of you, whatever, if you comment that you want one. Or you can let us know on Facebook or any of our other socials, Instagram, and get a hold of us, and we'll get you a hat.
And who doesn't want a free hat? I just lost one on the lake time or two before, so it's always good to have a couple extra.
You're due.
So yeah. So first we're gonna do a little advertisement for our final tournament of the winter series is coming up on March 1st at Kaufman Beach. The tournament hours will be 7:30 to 3:30, with registrations starting that morning at 6 a.m. You can also go to our website right now, www.midwestoutdoorexperience.com, and pre-register, and that qualifies you for pre-registration prizes tournament morning. So that just helps me and Austin kind of get the names and boat numbers all in order, and it just makes sign up that much quicker and easier. You will still pay at the ramp under our blue tent there at Kaufman Beach that morning. I want to give a quick shout out to our tournament sponsors for the winter series. It's going to be Justin Swass, land agent, Trophy Properties and Auction, E-Factor Lures, Wholesale Batteries, Lake of the Ozarks Marine Outdoors, Sportsman Lodge at Rocky Top, and Phase to Ground, and Hillerman and Associates Insurance, and Bass and Bob. And we just want to thank them for their contributions they made for our winter series. That's helped us get this tournament up and running. So without further ado, if you haven't heard, today we are going to be talking with guide at Lake of the Ozarks, Jack Uxa. He runs Jack's Guide Service, and he does a lot of fishing trips. He fishes for all kinds of things, but I think we got some good conversation to have tonight with Jack. So we're really looking forward to it. So without any further ado, let's bring Jack into the room. Jack, how's it going?
I'm glad you guys invited me. Appreciate the invitation. I'm glad to talk fishing with you guys tonight.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely. Well, Jack, tell us a little bit about yourself from maybe anybody who doesn't know you.
Well, I've been fishing a long time. I grew up in St. Louis. I know you guys are in the St. Louis area, and just started working in the fishing business in a local tackle store up there in the late '90s and '97, and then got a job at Bass Pro Shops in '99, and moved to Springfield, Missouri. And that at the time there was only one Bass Pro in the whole world, so it was really a busy place, and it was a great learning experience for a kid. Because just prior to moving down to Springfield, I was pretty much just a pond fisherman and a small river fisherman, which that's still a lot of fun. I love fishing small ponds and rivers, but moving down there, I started learning a lot of bigger lakes like Table Rock and whatnot, and that was a great learning experience. And so I've been working in the fishing business for a long time, and I started guiding in 2003, and now it's already 2025 now. I feel like an old man. I've been doing this for so long. I really feel like an old man too. I've been kind of sick the last couple of days, so you'll hear it in my voice. It's kind of off a little bit, but so I've just been fishing a long time and taking people fishing for a long time, and got a lot of experience, helping people get better at fishing.
That's awesome. What made you want to get into guiding? Is it just you just felt like you had what it took? What made you want to go that way?
Well, right off the bat, there's a few different ways you can make a living at fishing. Okay, you could own like a tackle store or be some sort of sales rep. That was a good thing. A very likely possibility. there was guiding, and then there was tournament fishing on the road. And I never had the money to really make it on the road, and never really had the guts to just put everything on the line and go out there to do that. And taking people fishing. I mean, I literally remember one particular couple that when I very first started in the fishing business at the little mom and pop tackle store, they were going fishing and they were asking me like, "Hey, what should we throw?" And I'm like, "Well, I was just here and I was throwing this," and they bought this, and then they came back the next week and said that worked great, and so they kept coming back, and I kept telling them other things to do, and then it started growing. I mean, right off the bat, I mean, I was literally 16 years old doing this stuff, and so it literally just helping people go fishing and having and sharing it with everybody. And I'm just kind of an obsessive guy too. I mean, even when it comes to like, deer hunting season, I'll go out there and freeze my butt off and, try to get one big buck. And, I don't really get into a lot of different things. I pretty much just obsess over a few things. And that's how I'm built, I guess.
That's awesome. I can say I see similar qualities in Austin and I both.
Yeah, I see you got a couple nice bucks behind you there.
Yeah. I keep the real good one in the living room, but we're in the office tonight, so I don't drive anybody crazy.
Yeah, well, I'm in my garage right now. I've got a couple girls over there and my wife, and this is about their 17th snow day, and we got several more snow days to go, and you never know what's going to happen. I walk into the door, they could be in a great mood or they could be at each other's throats again.
Safer to stay in the garage.
Definitely.
For sure.
Definitely. So
Yeah.
since you spend a lot of time guiding, kind of just kicking off some of these questions right away, on an average, now I know right now it's been crazy cold and crazy weather, how many days a week do you average on the lake in a week?
Well, I mean, as soon as like March gets here, it'll average 7 days.
Oh, really?
Not always guide trips. A lot of times I'm out there scouting around,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, especially once the summertime gets here, I mean, y'all know Lake of the Ozarks, it gets busy. And so, you gotta be out there a lot. And if you do 7 trips in a week, that's a light week. You gotta be doing more than that.
Wow.
These boats are expensive. The gas is expensive. The rods are expensive. And so if you just do a straight 7, especially if they're just 4-hour trips, that's not very much. You got to be doing way more than that. And so yeah, March is usually the start of it all. And man, I'm ready for March. We got about 8 inches of snow outside right now, and we've got the Toyota Series tournament coming up next week, and it's going to be a drama-filled week just based on how much snow do we get. It's still snowing right now. How much of the lake is going to be covered in ice? Are we going to be able to fish this big first major tournament of the year? We've had several small tournaments, and it's been brutally tough. It's been 1 or 2 guys are having some good luck, but then the majority of the field is just happy to get a limit. And I mean, like 2 guys working together, happy to get a limit.
Yeah.
And so it's been a really tough winter, and this is a major tournament. I mean, as far as I know, I don't think we've got any other tournaments that are going to be coming up later on this year that are going to be as big as this first one. I mean, this Toyota, it's going to be a big deal, and there's going to be some drama. I mean, there's going to be, I hope we're able to have it.
Austin and I were talking, I think last week, about we're excited to see the weights of the Toyota, because that'll really show everybody how bad we are. Like if the weights are really bad, then we'll be like, hey, maybe we're not as bad as we think we are. But realistically, we're just not good.
I tell you what, I mean, it's not unusual to have 50% of the field get skunked, basically. Between the co-anglers and, a lot of the co-anglers are going to get skunked half the time. And then a lot of the pros are going to get skunked. And, these aren't just regular pros. These are guys coming from Texas and all over the place because they've excelled in their home area.
Right.
And there's going to be a lot of people just coming in with 1 or 2. And, if you got 3, that's kind of not that bad. So, but there's also going to be some really big weights. I mean, there's a few guys out there, like I said, are going to catch 20 pounds a day. It's happened in the past. I mean, a few years ago, we got third in this event. Michael Harlan won it. He had 20-pound sacks each day of the tournament. That's pretty darn strong.
Yeah, that's consistent for sure over a 3-day stretch, especially. So
and I think he had 20 pounds before noon.
Oh my god,
that's even better.
Good for him.
I was working my butt off just to try to catch up to him.
Yeah. Why do you think it's been so tough this year? What do you think the deal is with this winter just kind of being off?
Right now we've got some excuses. Okay. So in December, we had a really good December. December was great fishing. Lots of people missed out on December. They always do. The water temperature's at a good place. So since December, January and February really have been bad. And, right now we've got a major shad kill going on. And so that's hurting things right now. And the water level has dropped like a rock here lately. Doesn't really necessarily, I don't know what happened. The beginning to middle part of January should have been better than what it was. And because those problems that I just mentioned weren't really going on then. We had fairly decent water temperature, no shad kill, and the water level was pretty stable.
Right.
But all of those are big factors. I mean, the water temperature, dropping like it has, and then, then we got the shad kill because of that. Those are big deals. And then the water level dropping like it has, those are big deals. And now all we can hope for is that the water level is stabilized. Okay. We know it's not going to go up until like, the end of March or something like that, beginning part of April. But if it'll just stabilize, that'll be a big deal. Okay. For these fish. And as far as the shad kill goes, I don't see that ending anytime soon. It's just once they start dying, it seems like, they just die for a while, and that's hard to work around. You can find some areas that there's less shad dying. That's definitely a thing. I'll definitely run away from a cove or a 2 or 3 mile stretch of the lake that I'm seeing a lot of dying shad. If I see one occasionally, that's okay. But if there's like 20, in a small area, I'm getting out of there pretty quick. So that's definitely what's going on, why things have been so tough. We've got a lot of bait fish in the lake. We could afford to lose a lot of bait fish. It'll actually make fishing a lot better later on in March and in April if we didn't have so many stinking bait fish in this lake.
For sure.
We want those bass to be more hungry because there's plenty of bass in there, guys. We see it at times. Last June, the bite was just on fire. In like December, the bite was really good. And so we got the bass in here. They've got a lot of food and they're pretty smart.
So I wanted to ask you, I wrote down so I wouldn't forget, you called this a major shad kill. In your opinion, how long do you think, or will this make the fishing better by next year and years to come? Do you have an opinion on that?
I don't believe it'll change things for long term. It'll just be, if we have and we're having it now, we want to have a major shad kill so we can have a better spring. But to be honest with you, once May comes around, they're going to get right back to it. They're going to have another hatch, and there's going to be a bunch of little guys coming in May.
Start all over again.
And by the time September rolls around and
right back
July and August, we're going to be dealing with. It's a good thing that we've got such a healthy lake. Okay, there's a lot of younger bass. Like you guys, when you guys go out fishing and you guys are struggling, there's still bass around. It's just that it's hard to get the big ones. But you're catching some bass. And there's another number of bass around. There's a lot of dinks, small ones fighting. I'm getting ready for this Toyota, so I'm kind of in the tournament state of mind right now.
Right.
In short bass, a 13-inch bass is, just not going to do a tournament fisherman any good. So that's kind of my, I know it's not right, but that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Right now.
And
shorts are shorts.
A lot of fish activity, but we've even been struggling to get a lot of the fish to bite.
Period. I was just going to say,
even some of the shorter fish have seemed like they're shying away from it.
Compared to
one
years
thing that
past, yes.
you guys are lower end specialists. When that water level drops, it'll actually help you guys a lot. You guys
Yeah.
want the water to be lower because you've got so much water. I mean, for you guys to pull into a cove and for there to be 40, 50, 60 feet of water in most of your coves down there, that's the norm. And if you
Yeah.
guys lose a little bit of that, that's going to help. It's actually going to make it's going to make your fish group up more and make it easier to find
Right.
them.
Make it a little bit easier to find some of those fish.
Yeah. Hey, do
So
you know if your cove has got any ice on it yet? Do you guys have any cameras down there on your dock or anything?
I've got one on my dock or my deck. I can kind of see the water. I don't know for sure though. I'll have to look for you.
Traditionally, the dam area, Bagnell Dam area, does not freeze over nearly as quickly as a lot of the other areas do.
Correct.
Like the Niangua, it freezes over. It's already froze over this year and it's thawed out. So there's different areas that I kind of pay attention to, and I look for
Mhm.
your area to be one of the last areas to freeze over. That's,
Yeah.
we've got enough cameras on this lake that we can just ask people, like, "Hey, is your cove
Right.
frozen over
Yeah.
yet?"
Hey, what's it look like out there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can,
Luckily, this lake is such a deep lake. It takes a long time for it to freeze over. I mean, there's a lot of little ponds, that freeze over easily, and this lake is so big, it usually doesn't freeze over.
yeah, I think the last time it like froze over down by the dam was like what, 5 years ago or so.
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
2021. I saw a picture somebody
Was
shared
it
the other day,
2021?
4 years ago, and that would be 2021.
Yeah, I just remember
I
seeing
believe.
people. There was people walking out in the main channel by the dam. And I'm
Nuts.
like,
Yeah.
that's not a good idea. Ice probably isn't quite that thick out there.
It was thick enough. You could have done it. I didn't do it. You could have done it though. No, but it was plenty thick. I mean, you could have driven a car out there.
Wow.
All right. Well, you answered a lot of questions I had lined up about about the shad kill and all that. So we'll move into just some winter fishing of what is your favorite wintertime bait or tactic? What do you enjoy throwing the most? And then what do you throw maybe you don't like it the most, but has the most success?
I'm kind of weird when it comes to favorites and stuff like that. I don't really have a lot of favorites because everything will, burn me at times. I mean, the Alabama rig is if I had to save one thing, I mean, the Alabama rig's just fun. It could be frustrating because you get hung up a lot with it, but I mean, it's the easiest way to get to 20 pounds. I mean, if they're wanting that thing, man, that's easy. So the Alabama rig's probably the answer, but that thing can burn you so easily too. If you just go out swinging like that, there's a lot of times where they're just going to bump at it and not hook up. They're just going to nip at it. So I mean, luckily I'm one of those guys that I routinely have a lot of rods on my deck.
Yeah.
There's some guys that are very like, oh, I've only got 2 or 3 rods on the deck, and that's not me. So obviously the jerkbait is number 2. Those are the 2 staples in the wintertime. Other baits down the list. I'll definitely throw a Ned rig. I'll definitely throw a blade bait. A jig too. A little finesse jig is definitely a player also. But those are the, I'll usually have several different variations of a jerk bait and an Alabama rig too, with different weights. Different, because you got to get the right speed with the Alabama rig, and sometimes you got to get the right color. Certainly with jerk baits, I'll change up colors a lot too. If it's a cloudy day or if it's a sunny day, or just trying to get their mood just right, because they are very particular here.
Do you find that like day to day, your changes are more profile or more color, or does it just kind of depend on conditions? Or like let's say for the A-rig example, like maybe you're throwing it because it seems like no matter what, you can at least here this year, you go out and catch them one day doing this with this color, and you're like, okay, I got this. Basically, like we've talked to multiple people, say they practice for our tournament or something. Okay, I did this worked this day. You go out the next day, can't do nothing with that same pattern. Like it sure seems to be the common denominator this year. What do you got to say on that?
I mean, you're right. I will play around with it. I go from a 3.5 inch. Lately, I've been using a lot of the Bojangle soft plastics. They're one of my new sponsors for this year. I've lost some of my old sponsors because of ownership changes and stuff. And and I'm really happy to get on with Bojangles, and they've got a great swim bait. But even before I was with them, I will downsize at times and I will upsize at times, trying to get what the fish really want. It seems like lately, it's funny, like they're in huge schools this year, and there's times where it's like there's 40 of them down there or 30 of these fish down there, and they're streaking and they're passing up your bait. They're charging it so fast. Like, how are you guys moving this fast with the water temperature being 38, 39 degrees? And you could watch it on the live sonar, and they will literally hit your bait sometimes and go past it and come back to it, and all kinds of funny things. But generally speaking, as we start off the year and the water's a little bit warmer, I'll be throwing the full size, like 4-inch swim baits, okay, or 3.5-inch swim baits. And as the year goes on, like now I'm throwing a lot of like 2.8s and then the little bit smaller swim baits, and once again, 5 of them on there. Sometimes I will have the center one being a larger bait. Sometimes I will put some extra color on that center one. Sometimes that still doesn't make a difference, guys. I mean, sometimes it's a real question of whether you put that bait down and just go to your jerk bait, or do you just cover more water with the Alabama rig? Because if you do put that jerk bait in there, a lot of times you've got a higher chance of landing those fish, of actually getting them to commit and getting them on your line. But it takes a lot longer to get your bait down there and just do what you needed to do. And Alabama rig's so easy. You just throw it out there and let it sink down. It takes 2 seconds, and you're covering 5 times as much water, really.
Yep.
But it's a real tricky question. I mean, a lot of times, this lake is it's so big. There's so many miles and there's so many different coves. I'm just talking like with the 50-mile marker down to where your guys' place is. There's so many different moods that these fish can be in. If you get on the right zone, it can be really fun and easy. And that's the hardest part, is covering enough water in practice to find that right zone where they're just chomping. Because that happens. I mean, you get in the right zone and it's like you're culling fish before it's 10 o'clock in the morning kind of thing. I've been there, done it. It doesn't happen very often, but it happens.
Especially when it does happen. So when you're talking your A rig, you're talking about kind of your speed, right? Walk us through
that's
that.
why I'll have different weights on.
So are you basically just trying to crawl it as slow as you can at the desired depth? Are you changing the speed up over the fish, kind of giving that a little bit of a pulsing action, like speeding it up, or slight drag with your reel or a rod to kind of speed it up? Or
that definitely depends on the day. And each day I'll look at it and try to figure out what it is that they want. Generally speaking, I'm going to start off slow and with the like 16th or 8th ounce jig heads. 8th ounce is probably the standard, because there's times where if you're going too slow, that's not good either.
Right.
That's a big mistake. A lot of people think you got to go super slow, and that's not the case. A lot of times they want it to be going a little bit faster. And so, there's times I speed it up too, guys. And there's times I'll pulse it. There's times, you got to start it. You got to let it go down to the bottom before you even start your cast. And work it down there on the bottom. You guys, I've bought some jig heads from you guys in the past with those little weed guards. I need to get some more of those. You guys make a great jig head.
We got more if you want some.
Yep.
Yeah. They're really good jig heads for Alabama rigging, because that is one of the most aggravating things about Alabama rigs, is they get hung up a lot. And
right.
It's really aggravating. Not only is it potential loss of money, but you just messed up the spot. You're not, you just had a spot, especially if the fish were there and you just messed it up. There's not a lot of spots where these fish are grouped up, and you can't just go over there and shake it free and think you're not going to spook them, because you're going to spook them.
For sure. And it kind of ruins the whole thing. Like you said, we kind of started that head from fishing table rock. We used to fish, just even before live scope and everything, we used to fish table rock and all the cedar trees and stuff. I had phenomenal A-rig bites for several years doing that. And we just needed something could get through those cedar trees and get close to them and get over the tops of them, and get the fish out of there without getting hung up every 3 casts. So we kind of decided that we needed to come up with our own head, because there was a couple heads you could buy or whatever, but everything was crazy
So
expensive.
expensive.
And then also they never fit the profile that we like to throw, the high techs and that style. So we're like, let's just make our own head, and it's worked out well for us. So that's what we just decided to do.
What size jig? What ounce jig heads do you offer?
Just eighth. That's pretty much all we throw. I've had multiple people say, "Yeah, can you make a 3/8, a half ounce, whatever?" I'm like, "Yeah, I need to, but I just never get around to it."
Well, it's like everything else. It's I've got a big project here. I'm trying to organize my boat. Take out a lot of the soft plastics, and get out of the winter phase and get ready for March and the next 6 weeks kind of phase. It just all takes time to do it, and it's we're all limited on time.
For sure. I guess kind of back into your A-rig and jerkbait even. What areas do you really like to fish during the winter? Are you looking like, is brush one of your top things? Are you looking more at rock changes and your channel swings and stuff, or even do you factor in docks over deeper water with wind and stuff blowing on them? What do you like to target, or what are you initially looking for before you kind of let the day tell you what you need to do, I guess?
You're breaking up there a lot.
Oh, he's breaking up too a little bit.
Yep, I heard him.
You're basically right now. It's Can you hear me now?
I hear you now.
I can hear him. Yeah, your picture's kind of cutting in and out though.
The secondary points. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. Secondary points, creek channel banks, and offshore brush is what you can't get enough of. I mean, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe he's cutting in and out.
Yeah, we can hear you. The picture's kind of frozen, but we can hear you.
I hope this fixes itself. I've got signal, so everything.
It's the snow.
Okay, good. There's fish on all of those things right now, guys. And the thing is you got to be watching your scope a lot. You got to be married to it. Your neck should be hurting at the end of the day.
Oh, it does.
And you got to be finding these groups of bass is what it comes down to. I've got one of those beat down outdoors pedestals where it can get up real high. It makes a difference. It really does help my back and this area right here, because I've only had this one for about a year, and it's so big that I literally have to turn it to the side as I'm driving down the lake. But it helps my customers understand it, and it's just easier on my neck, because it's a lot of hours, and this time of year probably more than any other time of year that I'm going to rely on that forward facing. So, hey, you're back.
There you are. Yeah, I could hear most of that, but he's kind of cutting in and out.
Yeah, I got 99% of it.
Yeah. Your picture's not very good, but I can hear you for the most part.
That is correct. I can also. With that, I was going to say,
I'm back.
Austin, or you talked about, I think Austin said his original question was like where. I was going to ask what advice, like at least for Austin and I, we a lot of times, we're weekend guys. We don't get there until the weekend. A lot of times it's like the evening before we want to fish a tournament or just fun fish. We struggle with, okay, we have all of Lake of the Ozarks. Where in the world should we start? Like, what advice do you have for a weekend guy who's coming to the lake, and like the lake is huge, and he's like, well, maybe I want to try new water. Maybe I want to try old things. There's many things to be said about fishing history spots and fishing new water. What advice do you have for a weekend guy who's coming to the lake and just doesn't know where to start?
Well, I mean, Alabama rig is, you got to be moving. You got to be covering a lot of water, right? I mean, for you guys, you guys have been down here occasionally, and you know what area hasn't been working that good lately. So I would avoid that area. It doesn't seem like the dam in your area is the dam. It doesn't seem like that's been winning a lot of tournaments lately, and so I would definitely slide up at least to the Shawnee Bend, Toll Bridge kind of area. And keep that Alabama rig in your hand and have both of you guys up front and be watching as much as you possibly can with your forward facing sonar. And you got to find those right areas and don't slow down until you find the right areas. And once you slow down, then you could throw your jerk bait, your jig, your everything at them. But you got to be you got to be covering a lot of water, because that with these fish grouped up like they are, it's a lot of all or nothing. There's a lot of dead water. And in fact, large portions of the cove can be dead. And so don't go that slow right off the bat. You got to be moving.
Gotcha. Okay, well, no, we can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
The picture every now and
Breaking
again.
up some of the time. Okay.
I'm hoping you can hear us okay. I'm blaming the snow tonight as a disclaimer.
The picture what?
The picture every now and again kind of freezes.
I can only hear you guys part of the time. I might try myself.
Okay, we can try that as well. I'll wait for the next question then while we attempt.
Yeah, see if he gets a little better signal.
But
I can hear you well, Nate. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I haven't lost you at all.
Okay.
It could be I'm telling you, he's got 8 inches of snow. We only got like 3 or 4. So. This is a perfect time, if you haven't already, to comment on or to send us a message on Facebook or Instagram and get a free beanie.
Free beanie right here you can get from Hillerman and Associates.
Yep. Can't ever have enough.
Nice beanies.
No price, no cost. It's completely free. Just send us a
black
message.
And an orange one.
Saying you want one. If you're a hunting guy, grab an orange one. If you like black.
Okay, guys,
You there, Jack?
Okay, yeah, and you guys should have me coming up on an additional.
Okay, let me mute.
Am I join in
this one? Okay, added that. Now let me do this. Okay, now try talking. I think your picture's a lot more clear.
It is.
Okay, added that. Now let me do this. Okay, now. There's an echo.
How's that working?
I heard a slight echo. I'm not sure if it's coming from Jack's computer.
I'm not sure. Oh, is it squeaking out too?
You gotta love it.
Is that better?
I didn't hear any echoes or squeaks.
I think that's better. Oh, I heard the echoing on your phone. It's a technological nightmare.
We told you we're not professional. We tried to put that disclaimer at the beginning.
Somebody said that we're good. They think we're brothers. We are cousins, actually, not brothers. Cousins. We'll try and get this straightened out, though. We got a lot of questions still.
Oh, good. Are you talking from people or from us?
From us.
Yeah, that's right. I got more. I was actually going to get into the jig and the minnow next. I don't know where you're at on that.
Steve just commented about that too.
Yeah. Oh, and then we got a Steve question for Jack later.
Yeah, we got multiple Steve questions.
Oh, I see a moving picture of Jack. I still got an echo though.
Yeah. Can you have to mute it?
Well, how about I go back to the other one that was not squeaking?
Okay, try that. All right, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
See, now I'm still hearing an echo.
I'm still hearing an echo too on him. What's happening? All right, try talking now, Jack. I didn't hear an echo. I think that may have fixed it.
Oh, that's all better.
We're
back. All right, internet connection.
That may have been on my end. I'm not sure because he was in the studio thing, like it was echoing
Well,
through him. Anyway, I think we got it sorted out.
Okay.
I know one
Well,
thing.
now-
I'm glad I'm not a lineman right now, guys, because that wind's blowing out there and that snow's. I could hear the snow out there. It does not sound good. You guys
not
are gonna be
fun.
pretty busy Yeah, you guys are gonna be busy after the storm, aren't you?
Yeah, sometimes. You'd be surprised what makes power go out and whatnot. You'll have more outages on sunny, blue sky days
Yeah,
sometimes than
birds
something like
landing on
this.
the wire.
Yep.
Teared on the wire in St. Louis. It's held up by tape.
It's hilarious. He's not
Well,
joking.
one of the good things is that with this particular snowstorm, we don't have a lot of ice to go along with it. This snow is a very light and powdery snow. It's
Yep.
been pretty. I mean, at least for the Lake of the Ozarks area, the guys working on the roads, they've been able to do a really good job. Like I said, we got 8 inches, so that's a lot of snow. But it's been a light, powdery snow, and it's been easy to shovel and easy to work around at least, and no ice. Like earlier in January this year, we had that ice first and then the snow, and that was a mess. That stuck around for a long time. It was hard to work with. The boat ramps were a mess. Roads, it was not good.
Hey, we got a question here, Jack. What's your go-to line for the A-rig? Are you a braid guy or fluorocarbon or mono?
Either fluorocarbon or mono. The braid is great. But I've seen him turn off and be so finicky on this lake at times. If I was just fishing a river or somewhere without a million tournaments on it, I'd throw the braid. But a heavy monofilament line like Big Game 20-pound test is it's so great. I mean, really, it's strong as can be. It handles the cold weather really well because there's a lot of days where we start off when it's below freezing. And Big Game has been around for a long time, and it's just hard to beat.
Tie your boat up with that.
I gotta bring it up. I hope you can hear me. You mentioned the tournaments. What do you think about all the tournaments on Lake of the Ozarks and how it affects the fish and the fishing pressure? Do you have any opinion on that?
Well, I think we've got way too many. We've got way too many tournaments. I mean, it said that we got like 560 per year. There's lots of days in the summer. In fact, every day in the summer we've got a tournament. Out of somewhere on one of these major boat ramps, and that's just way too much. Especially when the water temperatures are in the 80s and 90s. Man, you should almost stop having tournaments in general.
Oh yeah,
we've got way too many of them. And I don't get me wrong, I tournament fish. I fished your guys' tournaments in the past. I'm getting ready to fish a tournament next week. We just got to be smart about when we're going to have these tournaments, and we, in general, we need to cut our number from 560 down to in half. If we had 300 something tournaments a year, I think that would really help our fishing.
I agree with that. And then we even run the tournament series, but I feel a little better being it in the winter because that's the least hard it's going to be on the fish versus you get that summer months. I mean, you're probably killing almost every fish that you are weighing in when it's all said and done. If the water's that hot, it's just the name of the game when it's that warm.
Yeah. If you have a 12-hour tournament from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., I'm pretty convinced that they're all going to be dead. Now, they won't be dead immediately. You're going to weigh them in. You're going to let them go. They're going to swim off. Then they're going to die 3 days later. I mean, that's what the studies they've done these studies, and that's what they show. It's not just in Missouri that they've done these studies. They've done them in other areas.
Multiple states, places. One thing before we get into, we're going to talk about the minnow here in just a second. So that's a popular thing. I know multiple people want to talk about it. I'm terrible at it. I need to learn about it.
Me
Steve
too.
here wants to talk about it. But before we get to that, when you are jerkbait fishing, I got 2 questions with it. Number 1, are you weighting your jerkbaits a lot to get them deeper to those zones, 15-foot places where your traditional jerkbait isn't going to get that deep? Say you're fishing over brush.
By and large, yes. I use a lot of the Berkeley stunner jerkbaits, and they come out of the box with a slow sink already. And I'll usually add a little bit of wire to that just to make it that much quicker. Because this lake is a deeper lake than what most people are used to fishing. When they design lures, they don't design lures for lakes like Table Rock and Lake of the Ozarks. We're so much deeper than most other lakes. So I do add a little bit of lead wire to the hooks.
Gotcha. And then when you're fishing your jerkbait, are you almost exclusively live scoping it?
Yeah, I mean, there's not. I wouldn't say. I mean, there's a lot of times I take people out, and we'll have 2 or 3 people, and we'll try to watch as much as I can. And I'm pretty good at watching trying to watch everybody's baits. Jerk baits show up pretty well on the screen because at times they're like this, and then at times they're like this, and so they do this all the time. And I'll watch that as much as I can from the front of the boat. But it's you know, you try to watch it as much as you can. But if it's my stuff, it's easy to watch. Same thing with Alabama rigs. Alabama rigs are really easy to watch.
Yeah.
But if we're all throwing like the minnow, like we're going to talk about here in a second, man, that we've all got to be like all huddled right at the front of the boat for that to happen. You know,
Right.
Because I wouldn't give somebody in the back of the boat a minnow.
Right.
You know,
You want to be able to see what's going on. So the final things with the jerkbait, it was always for years, you know, before we had live sonar and all this stuff. It was you throw it out there, and it was like the colder it got, the longer you let that thing pause, right? Now with forward-facing sonar, I feel like I'm seeing more and more people basically playing keep away with the jerkbait from the fish. Do you think that a lot, like, or do you have more success playing like keep away, like when the fish gets close, you jerk it, keep it further away, or do you think you have more success when a fish is coming up to it that you just dead stick it and don't do anything?
I'm not hearing you.
Oh,
Ask again.
I can hear you. Did you hear any of that, Jack?
I can just see his smile.
Yep, I can hear you.
I'm only hearing about half the words you're saying.
Shoot again,
but
Austin.
I definitely, I will let them get up close to it. And
nope, I'm not hearing him.
Me either. I'm not sure if he's.
Can you hear us, Jack?
Yeah, I didn't hear anything you just said. But I'll definitely watch them and play with them. And if they're gonna want it fast, I'm gonna try to keep it away from them. And you know, there's gonna be a time here. The water temperature is bottoming out right now. Okay, and that's a big thing as far as these fish are concerned. Once we get on the upswing side of things, which is going to be happening here in just a matter of weeks, I'm going to move that bait pretty quick. I'm going to move it a little faster than what people think. You know, I know some guys that are really experts, like Marcus Sikora, expert at working the bait slow over brush piles. And there's times I'll do that, especially now with live scope. But once I can move it faster, I'm going to move it faster than what people think.
Gotcha. Good to know. Good to know. Okay, now let's talk about the minnow. First, I guess, where are you fishing this minnow? What are you doing? Are you fishing it in and around brush? Are you looking for fish suspended out in the open around shad?
Maybe before we even get there, let's define what the minnow is. Maybe there's somebody out there that doesn't know what we're talking about. We're not actually talking about a real live bait minnow. What's the minnow rig or the Debiki rig look like to you, Jack?
Let me see if I can grab one. So this is just one I grabbed out of my boat. Just luckily I happen to be right here in my boat.
Nice.
This is a Bojangles scope minnow. Hopefully you can see the little cute tail. It never stops wiggling, does it? Almost never.
It's always moving.
And this is a Chompers jig head. You can see this one has a reverse line tie where it's not straight 90 degrees. It's actually going backwards a little bit. And that helps it wobble. And, you know, it's about a 3.5-inch bait. I believe this is a 3/8 ounce. This is a little heavier than I would say is I want to have different weights on the deck. I want to have an 1/8 ounce. I want to have like a 3/16. If I was going to buy one, it'd be the 3/16. At times I'm looking for fish that are gonna be floating around. In other words, a floater is not gonna be on brush. He's
Mhm.
not gonna be on anything. Lately, I'm not finding any bass that are floaters, or very few bass that are floaters. Now that'll change. In December, I was catching plenty of floaters. Um, but lately they've been bottom orientated. This water's been dropping, and the water's been getting colder, and I'm finding a lot of my fish down on the brush and just down on the bottom. And that'll change. A lot of these fish will start to sun themselves eventually. Um, now catfish, I'm catching a lot of catfish that are floaters, and I'm catching a lot of drum that are floaters. And those catfish, some of those guys are monsters. I think you guys saw that video that Mike Baker just did last
Yeah.
week where we caught really nice big old catfish, and they're all floaters. They're all just suspended out there, and this is literally what we're throwing at them. I mean, we're just throwing a bass lure at them. And that video, look at Mike Baker videos. I mean, he did a great job with it. It was a lot of fun, and that was not even a pleasant day to be out there. That was a day that they didn't want to bite, and we still caught them good. And we caught them right down there. You guys will recognize some of the coves that we were in. I guarantee
Yeah.
it, because I mean, the Hawaiian Island was just in the background. I mean, Jonathan Lanning was right in the background,
Yep.
and if we
Cool.
would have went on just an average day, we would have caught even bigger fish than what we did. But we went on a cold front day, of course, to video it. But yeah, for the bass, I'm getting my lure down there. I'm watching it. I'm hovering it right above them. I'm pulling them out of the brush with it. And it's funny, like when I went and fished down at Table Rock with this bait, the bass were so much more aggressive down there. They were just chasing bait fish left and right. And that doesn't happen very often here. That's almost never happens here. But down there, they were just all over it. And it wasn't just a spotted bass too at Table Rock. I mean, we caught a lot of spotted bass, but we also caught largemouth and smallmouth doing the exact same thing. And those fish are just a lot more aggressive than our fish. Those fish are 2 or 3 times more aggressive than our fish on Lake of the Ozarks. And we've got some spotted bass here, but it's like a different strand of spotted bass. I'm basically convinced that it's a different strand of spotted bass. They're just totally different.
Yeah.
And they're not nearly as aggressive.
Interesting.
What is your a cadence? Like you cast down, are you wiggling a little bit? You just kind of trying to let it sit still and let the water do all the work? What's the big tip there?
I'm only going to wiggle it when I've got a target, either a fish or a piece of structure that I'm wiggling it by. I'm not going to just work it off the bat. Hope you guys can still hear me because I just lost you guys. But there's going to be a lot of times where you just simply miss. Okay, you cast to a spot and you didn't get the right lineup, and you're going to have to make another cast because you missed just by off. You were just off by a few feet, but you were off, and you got to make a new cast.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Did you guys hear any of that?
Yeah,
Yeah, I did.
We actually got it all.
So you
I
get
was able to catch that. So you're
okay, good.
you're pretty much throwing it at obviously some sort of target, and then are you always reeling it back to you, or are you ever getting like kind of close and just pitching it to it and kind of hovering it over it?
Both. I mean, there's times. I mean, I don't want them to get below me, but it happens. I mean, it's something that you try to fight. You want to get them before that happens. And that's why I'll have usually I have 2 or 3 of them on the deck with different weights, because you want to if the bass are at say 8 feet down, over 30 feet of water, that's a really lightweight bait, because it'll go by them too quick if I throw this 3/8 ounce there. Now, if they're down in the bottom in like 25 feet of water, that's where you want the 3/8 ounce, because it'll have the right speed at that depth. So a lot of times I'll have different weights for that reason, because you gotta have, if it's going too fast, they're not going to bite at a 38-degree water temperature.
Right. Now, do you tie?
And I definitely like this type of fishing. There's a lot of people that don't like it and they think it's boring. It's really exciting. It catches a little bit of everything. I mean, you guys crappie fish a lot, I know. So, all it is a big crappie jig. I mean, and I've been crappie
Yeah.
fishing forever. So for me to pick this up and adapt my style of fishing, it was not a big, hard ask. This makes a lot of sense to us. You guys crappie fish, I know, and
Mhm.
it's just a big crappie jig, and it makes a lot of sense because we've always caught a lot of, bass on crappie jigs, and we've caught catfish on crappie jigs, and we've
Right.
caught
That's
drum on
everything.
crappie jigs, and now we've got a bait that's a little bit more designed and a technique, and the biggest thing is our technology has gotten better, and we're getting better at adapting to this new technology, and that's the
Mhm.
biggest thing.
Yeah. Austin, I think
Yeah.
you were just about
And
to ask a question about what knot he ties for your minnow.
Yeah. Do you tie a loop knot or just your regular old whatever knot you tie?
I just tie the regular old knot. I tie a polymer. I think the reason why I've gotten away with that is because of this particular Chompers reverse line tie.
Mhm.
Um, I've tied the loop knot in the past when we're crappie fishing for certain techniques, and
Mhm.
that's fine. I could do it again. I just haven't felt the need to with this particular jig head.
Hmm.
And that's simply because that line tie is angled backwards.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
interesting.
A lot of times when we're crappie fishing, I remember back in the 90s and probably even late 80s, I learned this technique of when you're crappie fishing, you want to move that knot backwards. And that really helps when you're crappie fishing. In fact, I really hope Chompers comes out with a crappie sized version of the same line tie because it'll help a lot of people. It just keeps your bait much more horizontal in the water column because you're always pulling it from this angle,
Mhm.
because you're always here in the boat, and this just helps it be more horizontal in the water compared to this because this happens a lot, and it's something that as a guide, I preach that to a lot of customers, and a lot of them already know about it, but there's some people that don't, and it'll make a big difference when you're crappie fishing, and it's making a big difference when we're bass fishing too.
Hmm.
Try that out.
Yeah, for sure. I like that.
Yeah,
Um,
well, one of the things you guys do a lot of, you guys do some brush pile fishing and some dock fishing, but you guys do a
Mhm.
lot of open water fishing. It'll
Yeah.
make the biggest difference when you're vertical fishing on brush.
hmm, I could
Yeah.
see that. I could see that being a big player because it just looks more natural as it
So
sits more
I got a question
horizontal.
for you guys. I know you guys have been doing some crappie fishing down there. Have you been having some luck? Have you been having no luck? What have you guys been doing?
Compared to years past, this year has been Austin and I's worst year on record since we started winter crappie fishing. At least, uh, when did we really start hitting the crappie hard in the winter, Austin? Was it 21, 2020?
2020, I think.
Somewhere in there. That's
Somewhere in
when
that realm, yeah, for
that,
winter. This has been the worst by far. I plan on fishing this Sunday. I'm gonna start out crappie fishing and I'll see if it's improved at that part of the lake. If it has not, I'm going to head uh, further down the lake in search of an area that might be better crappie fishing.
That's one of the great things about this lake this time of year is you could drive 10 miles and be there in 10 minutes. It's no big deal. In the
Mhm.
summertime, it's very difficult to do that.
Yep.
And I think that's all you got to do is just simply drive 7, 8 miles, and you'll be fine. You'll be right back in them.
Yeah. Here's another question too. Do you ever add any scent to your minnow? Similar, I mean, I know with crappie fishing for years, people have put the crappie nibbles and stuff on there. Do you put anything on your bass?
I do sometimes. This is a Berkeley Gulp minnow. I'm not sure how the glare is here, but it's a 4-inch bait.
Nice.
Um, I'll definitely throw that there. And that's the thing about gulp is you got to be a little careful because it could dry out on you, and
Hmm.
so you got to keep it wet. A lot of times I'll put it in the live well if I'm picking up a different rod for a while. Um, but there's a lot of scent with these Berkeley gulp baits,
Yes.
and there's times, yeah, I like scent. I like scent in general. Choppers is one of my sponsors. They've got some great soft plastics. They're stanky when you open up a bag of chompers. I mean, it's like, wow. Yeah, that strong garlic stuff. But I tell you what, I really like that stuff. I'm not just trying to sell their baits. They've got some good, that smell. The fish like that for some reason.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't always do it. I mean, these other ones, they don't have any scent, and
Mhm.
the fish bite them too. But there's definitely days where it's like it's good to have a little flavor down there.
For sure. Nate, do you have any other winter-oriented questions you want to ask him?
Just real quick. What's your favorite kind of like weather conditions in the winter? Like that you're like, oh my gosh, got to be out there this day. It's a beautiful day in February. What's your beautiful February day conditions look like?
Um, I want I really the wind is such a big factor this time of year, so I want to be monitoring the wind. If I can have mid 30s to low 40s, that's great. I definitely like it above freezing. I've got plenty of warm gear. I've got a float suit and I've got the AFCO suit, which is really keeps me warm.
Mhm.
So I've gotten used to the cold weather now. But if I can have it above 32 degrees and I could cast, we've had so much ice this year on the guides, and the guides are so annoying. You guys had one tournament, I believe, that was below freezing the entire day.
Terrible.
I really feel sorry for your anglers that day. That was
Us
a
too.
record-breaking nasty
I
day.
feel sorry for everybody that showed up.
Bluetooth connected.
Yeah, so
Uh,
I want to have it above freezing just so I can cast. If it's 38, 39, 40s and it's I feel like that's asking a lot right now, and the wind not to be blowing 30 miles an hour.
Yeah.
That way I could play my live scoping game. I can play my little video game up there, and
There you go.
that'll make me happy.
yeah.
Is there ever too much wind? Like you get let's say it's 30 degrees and you get that stiff cold north wind. Are you trying to avoid the wind on those days? Or are
Yeah.
you just still using it to your advantage?
No, I'm definitely trying to avoid it. I will purposely go to coves, and I'll plan out my day of like, okay, the wind's out of this direction today. I'll try to avoid it. I mean, yeah, and
Now,
it's hard to do because we have a lot of wind.
Sure.
is the avoiding it for you for your comfort, or do you think that it has a negative effect? Getting maybe some more water,
Good question.
cooler water from the surface, getting some of that riled up with the fish mixed in, and making a negative effect on the fish.
There's a negative effect on the fish. I mean, they like to have some movement that can help them bite sometimes. But I'm so much more efficient just with my scope and just watching everything that I just want to be in control if I can be in
Gotcha.
control.
Okay. We got a question here. Someone said if it's snowing in the Ozarks, they've heard if it is that they're biting. What are your thoughts on that?
I've definitely caught the crap out of them when it's been snowing at times. I mean, um,
I agree
I
with you.
remember one time I was fishing with Aaron Click. He's the owner of Chompers Baits. And I mean, we were just absolutely just one big one after another big one. And, I mean, I had a lot of snow in my boat that day. The snow was probably 2 or 3 inches deep. It was pretty much up to my gun walls. Um, yeah, I've had days that were just like incredibly good when it's been snowing. And there's times where the ice is annoying. But there's a lot of times where the ice, if the water temperature is like 45 degrees and it's snowing, that's a good situation. If the water temperature is, 36 degrees and it's snowing, well, a lot of times that's when you're going to have that ice. So ice is kind of, you got to watch the ice. And once we get into March here, the water temperature should start to warm up, and then if it snows on a day, as long as the water temperature is warm and you can dip your rod tip in the water, then you're fine.
Right.
Right now, if you dip your rod tip in the water, it doesn't really help you out very much. Like 2 casts later, you got ice again.
Yeah.
I gotta say, along with fishing in the snow, that's one of my only tournament wins I have recorded under my belt. Austin's brother and I actually went into a small little tournament. We were down at Table Rock, and we're like, "What the heck? We're down here. Let's hop in a small tournament." It was basically like a fish off with just a couple of buddies, and we're like, "Whatever, we'll pay the fees." Snow, and we're like, "Are they even going to have this?" And we threw rock crawlers all day, and we won. We come back to weigh in our fish. They're like, "Oh my gosh, how'd you guys catch them?" I'm like, "Well, out of towners won it." Took off.
That's
was great.
awesome.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was a lot of fun.
Yeah, they'll definitely bite with the snow. I mean, that air pressure is dropping, generally speaking, and Yeah, there's some incredible days I've had fishing in the snow, but
Yeah.
it's not all the time though. That's one thing that's kind of been thrown out there. That's like all the time. It's not all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
even when it's been raining, there's times where it absolutely sucks in the rain,
Mhm.
and there's times where it's really great, and you can't do any wrong, especially right before it rains. So it's this fishing game is such a hard thing to predict. Um, it's I know you guys do some deer hunting, and there's a deer hunting app, Deercast, and it talks a lot about air pressure falling and rising and all that kind of stuff. And deer are supposed to like it when it's high, but it also tells you when the pressure is going to be dropping. And I tend to watch that thing year round, not just during the fall and winter when I'm deer hunting. I watch it for that water, or I watch it for that air temperature to be falling, and I try to fish when that's happening.
Awesome. That's good advice. I have the app and I use it all the time. Like you, I'm constantly watching barometric pressure and everything else.
Yeah.
Okay, I know Austin was wanting to wrap up the winter questions. I kind of have a transition one to kind of get us in there, and I don't know where else to put it. So, FK Jack, if you're fishing in a tournament, and maybe this depends on how your practice went or if you had practice prior, you said you're kind of getting in that tournament mindset, getting ready for the Toyota Series. When tournament day hits, is your objective more so to cover as much water until you find what's working, or let's say maybe you just like, okay, I'm gonna break down this bank, I'm gonna break down this cove because I know this worked yesterday. What's your mindset going into a tournament?
One of the things about being on the water all the time is I very rarely do I start just completely blank. I've always got a good idea of what's going on, and I just try to add to it and find other areas to, you know, um, just to expand on what I already know. Um, and unfortunately, right now, is there's groups of fish on just about everything right now. So I'm just trying to find groups of fish right now. They could be on, like I said, they could be on brush piles, they could be on secondary points. Um, is I'm trying to find more of those things. Generally speaking, you want to find the right zone. That's probably the biggest thing. Which 10-mile stretch of the lake is going to be the hot zone? It's going to be the dam. It's going to be the gravoids. It's going to be, the Niangua Arm. The Niangua Arm has generally won a lot of tournaments this year. Seems to be like the hot area. But there's 70 miles, 90 miles of lake. There's times where I'm driving up to the 60, 70-mile marker too. That's what I'm really going to focus on most of the time because, because I've got history just about everywhere. I live in Osage Beach, but if I've got to go fish a tournament at the 60-mile marker, it's not a big deal to me. I just got to find out if that's the right zone.
Nice, gotcha. And with that, Austin, if you want to kind of transition in, I think you had some spring questions. We're all looking forward to getting out of winter with how bad
Yeah.
it's been.
Let's think spring for a little bit here. Basically, when we're heading into spring, you kind of start thinking pre-spawn, right? To an extent. And what are you looking for? Because you're saying you got fish that are grouped up now on, it could be brush, secondaries, and things like that. What are you looking for that next step to be?
The first step is going to be a crankbait. I'm going to pick up a Berkeley Fritzside crankbait. You got to be cranking at some point. The next step after that is going to be a spinnerbait. The next step after that, for some reason, is going to be a jig. I don't know why it kind of goes in that order. But that's, the crankbait bite is going to last for a couple weeks. The spinnerbait bite is going to last for a couple weeks. And then it goes back to a jig, which is a slower moving bait. But that's the generally what I've seen in the past. And I don't ever really put away the Alabama rig and the jerk bait, but they definitely won't be as big of players here real soon as things start to come out of the 30s and get into the 40s and mid 40s. That's back in the day they used to say that you start throwing the crankbait at 45 degrees, and that's not really true. I'll throw it before then. But that's a good rule of thumb. It kind of depends on if you've got a warming trend. They'll move shallow here pretty darn soon, and they'll start getting on some bigger rocks, and they'll be surprisingly shallow here real soon.
That's kind of my next two questions I have that tie into what you just talked about is
you guys got to remember, I'm used to Bass and Bob asking me a million questions, and so we just had a video last night, and a lot of you guys watching, our viewers today are also going to be Bass and Bob viewers, and so we just came out with a video last night. It was great. He's a little long-winded. We got there at 5 p.m. We didn't leave till 10 p.m. and
Man.
and we recorded almost everything there. So
Wow.
Try to move things along.
Yeah.
Because last night we didn't get very far. We basically went from water temperature being 40 to 50, and we were supposed to be talking about like April and May and other things, and we didn't get there. It was 10 p.m. We just quit.
So you're talking about fish pulling up, getting shallower. So you're in your head, you're thinking that happens relatively, actually sooner than later, like surprisingly sooner, especially when the water temp is still kind of relatively cool.
Yeah.
And then, are you looking basically just the same area? Say they're on secondaries or something like that, or brush. You're basically just looking for something that has access to a little bit deeper water they can slide off to if we get like a nasty cold front or something. But on like a warming trend, kind of like you were talking, then they're probably going to push up closer to that bank.
Yeah, it really is that simple. It really is, and you got to be able to. You got to be ready to cover a lot of water once that happens. I mean, it could literally happen in like a week to 10 days from now, guys. And I'm saying this with 8 inches of snow out there. I've seen it happen.
Right.
Where, if we get the right, I mean, the forecast does not look bad. We've got a lot of days in the upper 40s and 50-degree mark in the forecast to where it could be a light switch event. And that's also one of the aggravating things about March is March is one of the more challenging months. I'm not going to call it what I call it, because we're on recording this, but it could be a very challenging month because you'll have some phenomenal days in March. You'll catch a 7-pounder one day, and then the next day it changes completely. And it's, I've got people, coming from far away to come fishing, and it just totally changed because we had a front come in and they slid back out, and I had this great crankbait bite or, whatever bite. And it just changed. It changes a lot in March. And the fish are moving quick too, even with the water temperature being cold and them being cold blooded, you think they wouldn't be moving fast, but it seems like in March they want to be moving themselves.
Yeah, I feel like LiveScope has taught us as a whole, everybody, that the fish move way faster or can move way faster than you could ever think, even when it's very cold.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm we're all still learning this stuff, and we've all had it for 4 or 5 years now, or maybe 5 or 6 years now. But it's amazing how much it's taught us, isn't it?
It's wild, really. So now, kind of leading into what I was talking about, the fish moving up. Say you're throwing the crankbait, or say you're throwing the spinnerbait. Ideally, you're probably wanting that to be relatively close to the bottom, or maybe even hitting off the bottom. Am I right with that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So how are you approaching areas that you're fishing this? Are you looking for areas that have less docks so you can kind of 45 or parallel the bank versus you have 10 million docks at the lake? How do you combat both of those things? Because it's relatively easy if you say you're in the glaze or something, you've got all this area that's just shoreline versus maybe you're up by us by the lower end where you don't have nearly as much, dock free shoreline.
You're right. You guys are kind of limited down there. You guys got more condos than anywhere else. You've got more coves than anywhere else. But I will purposely go to the glaze arm because it fishes more like, Stockton or Table Rock without the docks. And I'll purposely go down there and fish that area at times just because of that, because I want to parallel the bank. And, because there's some areas of the lake that just, you're covered up with docks, and there's, and the upper Osage is the same way. It's a lot less people in the upper Osage, a lot more open bank up there. Just the Shawnee Bend side has got a lot smaller houses and less big docks. So yeah, you got to be mindful of that. And that's one of the great things about this lake is even though it's got a ton of people and a ton of docks, it still has some areas that like the state park that you can get to. And, it would take you guys 15, 20 minutes to get there. But once you get there, then you're good,
Mhm.
you know, we still have some areas that are kept natural. And that's,
Yeah.
I appreciate
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that area will stay natural since it's the state park. So that's,
that. Yeah.
be protected
Yeah.
for
The
hopefully
Niangwa's
forever.
got some good stretches of open areas too. So it's not
Right.
just the upper Osage. The Niangwa just, yeah, you guys know. I mean, even down in your neck of the woods where you do have a million condos, there are certain stretches that you guys can get on if you really think about it.
Oh yeah,
And yeah,
for sure, for sure.
I gotta ask Jack. You mentioned a live scope, and me and Austin have talked about this in the past as well. With more and more guys getting live scope, it allows you to watch your bait get right down there on those brush compared to like the years before anybody had all that. Do you think that there's something to these fish like seeing that many more baits because guys are actually getting their baits down there in the brush? Do you think that has a factor of why maybe I don't know if these fish are catching on like oh that's fake or oh they're just seeing that much more versus when your average guy was just out there casting and maybe he was 10 feet above the brush pile every time and he wasn't given it enough time. You think there's anything to that?
it makes a lot of sense what you're saying. And I also I agree with what you're saying. And there's a lot of people that will be scoping a fish or something, and they'll purposely take it away from fish. They'll purposely take their transducer and the pinging away from the fish.
Hmm.
And once they get a fish locked onto their bait and they think it's going to happen, then they look away. They don't want to watch it anymore. They just want to solely focus on their rod tip and what they're feeling.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, and I'm not sure if I believe in that, but I mean, it does seem like just going out and just regular bass fishing is getting harder and harder and harder every year. And,
Absolutely.
and I'm a multi-species guide. I mean, it does seem like I'm doing a few more crappie trips nowadays and a few more catfishing trips and just a few more everything else because the bass fishing's it's been difficult. I mean, I really think this year will maybe turn things around. I think we had a little bit of a bass, disease or something went around. Maybe a few of them died off that one summer or something like that. I think we had a lot of new fish coming up and a lot of young bass hatched. They've filled in that gap.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping that this year is going to be a little easier year. But we've had a few years here that have been really tough. And
And
I mean,
another
there's always
question.
people catching them. It's hard to say any of this stuff because, next thing
Right.
you know, somebody's catching 20 pounds for 3 days in a row. But
Somebody
Yep.
always is,
it's
that's
been
for
tough for
sure.
a couple years.
One
What's
other
that?
question I said one other question that just came to mind. If you had to rate our lake right now on like a A to F grade on health of the bass population, bass on Lake the Ozarks, what do you think the lake's at right now, letter grade wise?
I'd give it a C. Just good. I mean, it's fine. It's not horrible. There's some areas that I probably wouldn't be fishing.
Mhm.
Your area.
Great.
I'm out of there.
I used to see you guys on a regular basis, and I haven't seen you guys fishing at all the last little while. I'm like, oh, well, it's because I haven't been down there as
Yeah.
much. But
No, we're still there, still struggling.
We're
a bit stubborn, you could say.
Yeah.
there's plenty of other areas that I am catching fish in, and it's that's why I would grade it as a C right now. It's fine. They're in there. This past summer we had a good summer. June was phenomenal. I remember I was thinking about getting into this one tournament that Bass and Bob had. It was a solo tournament. It was a big high stakes tournament,
Mhm.
and I was catching some pretty good fish right before that. And I was looking at the tournament weights. I'm like, my goodness, everybody's catching them good. I mean, there's 20 pounds was typical. That was
Yeah.
standard. And I literally did not get in the tournament because everybody's catching 20 pounds. And so they're there. They're in here. It's just they get tough at times, and they're smart. I think they're smarter here than a lot of other places for some reason. And but they're in here. It's just some days it's hard to make them bite.
Yep. We've had now 2 fish over 8 pounds weighed in our one last year and
Yeah.
then one this year. Crazy. What's the biggest bass you've ever pulled out of Lake the Ozarks yourself that you have weighed?
I caught a 9-pounder, and it was really close to where you guys are at, down at the 2-mile marker. Caught him on a shaky head, in June, and it was an
Wow.
absolute monster. I
Man, in
remember
June.
I had a couple guys with me, and we had they had messed up a couple things. So we pulled up to a spot, and I was re-rigging stuff for a few minutes, and they were casting. And I don't think they caught anything. If they did, they didn't catch much. And I got everything rigged up, and I picked up a rod and threw it out there, and set the hook pretty much right off the bat on a Magnum shaky head,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and it was this 9-pounder. It was huge. And then I helped a customer catch a 10-pounder here a few years back. So
Cool.
those are the two biggest fish that I've ever been around on Lake of the Ozarks as far as largemouth are concerned.
That's awesome.
That's great. The 10. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that 10-pounder was caught on March 15th. I'm not sure what year it was. Um, but it's March is just around the corner. That
Mhm.
particular year we had some big rains and we had some dirty water, and we had caught a lot of 4-pound fish that day. I mean, it was a kid and a dad, and they weren't much fishermen. They were just kind of getting into it, and I mean, we had numerous 4-pounders that day. And then the guy catches a 10-pounder, and we
Dang.
weigh it, and we get Bass and Bob to come over and video it, and we release it at PB2. So, it was kind of I was really shocked that that happens. I mean,
Yeah, that's
I caught a
huge.
10-pounder one time out of a farm pond, but to catch a 10-pounder out of a big lake like this, I didn't think that was going to happen, and here I helped the
You
guy
did
do
it.
it. So
That's awesome. That's
That's
great.
really cool. It's really cool. But anyway, Austin, if you got any more spring stuff to throw his way.
The only other thing I was gonna ask him was about he kind of talked about rock sizes earlier. You said traditionally start getting on the bigger rock first, and then you kind of tapers down as you get closer to the spawn. Is that kind of how you think about it, or
I'll jump around. I
jump
mean,
around?
honestly, there'll be deals in later March that they'll get back on the big stuff in late March. I don't know exactly why, but there'll be some times pretty darn soon here. They'll be on these transitions of pea gravel.
Mhm.
And this used to be a bigger factor before we got forward facing sonar, but there was a lot of times because that's all we had back then was rock transitions.
Mhm.
And so there was a lot of times early in the season I'd get on these pea gravel transitions, and in like the first 2 weeks of March, and then for some reason at the end of March we'd get back on these big rock things, and even about out towards the main lake again, and that never made sense. And then 'cause once we got into April, then we'd have that you're getting a lot closer to the spawn at that point,
Mhm.
and then they slid back in the coves. But I don't really know how to explain that to people, but maybe just a lot of it has to do with the fact that this lake is so deep. It takes a long time for it to warm up. I mean, the majority of the bass spawn on this lake in May. They'll
Mhm.
start in April, but really the majority of them do it in May. And I'm not just talking like May 1st. I mean, it's Memorial Day weekend, and these bass are still spawning, and you could watch
Yeah.
them spawn, and that really surprises a lot of people. And I think that goes back to the fact that this lake is just such a deep lake. It just
Mhm.
takes a long time for it to warm up.
Certainly has a lot of water. And I wonder too, like what you're talking about, how you had fish at a transition, maybe slid further back in a cove, and then like so you almost went backwards,
Yeah.
opposite of what you would think. I wonder if like if you looked at that now at forward facing sonar, you kind of try to replicate the same thing. If in those areas by those transitions there was something out offshore that you couldn't see as well, or something that some of those fish were slid out to where they kind of disappeared from that bite, and you were getting the next wave of fish that were kind of maybe moving in or whatever.
Yeah, and you know how we were talking a minute ago about how fast these fish move? I
Hmm.
think there's a certain time in late March where they're moving so dang fast that they don't want to be slow. They don't want to be slowed down by the coves. And so they're just sticking on that main channel, and they're sticking to those big rocks for some reason so they could it's almost like they're migrating. Now, I know
Hmm.
bass don't really migrate like a white bass does or a paddlefish. Those are true migrating fish.
Right.
They need to have water flow for their eggs. And so but it's almost like the bass are moving so dang fast that they don't want to be slowed down by too much in the cove. They need to be able to be on that the highway. and they'll stop occasionally at the points or at the rocks, at the bigger rocks, just so they can feed, because they still want to feed. They're not thinking about spawning at that point.
Right.
They could care less about spawning at that point. They're just trying to feed still. And then once we get into April, then they go, okay, well, it's getting closer to spawn now. And they'll start setting up more on the docks then. And certainly by like the 10th of April, they'll be setting up on docks. And not necessarily bedding yet, but getting closer.
Right. Getting kind of in that that area.
May is a awesome month. May is kind of one of those months that we start to see a lot less tournaments, and certainly a lot less big tournaments. And I mean, you guys know the lake. I mean, we catch a lot of fish in May. May is awesome. May is a fun time to go fishing. We got much more stable weather in May. You know, March and April, man, you can have some great days, good fishing, but just as easily you can, have some really ugly days and windy and nasty and cold.
Yeah, May's
once you get into the later, May you're good. You can wear shorts.
Yeah,
and things are a lot more stable. The water level is so much more stable once we get to May too, and that's a big thing. Lake of the Ozarks is, it's controlled by the dams, and they keep the water level low, and the fish a lot of times they'll wait for that to be more stable.
I asked Steve Sigmund this in our last podcast. How often are you every day on watching Ameren and the hydro generation going through the lake? Are you constantly looking at the current? Are you paying a lot of attention to that? Or you just kind of throw that to the side, or really only pay attention if they're like really cranking out like full capacity of how much water they're moving?
It just depends. They changed their one website up that I used to look at all the time. To answer your question, in the summertime, I look at it every day. In fact, sometimes I look at it multiple times per day. And a lot of times I'll start my trips at 11 a.m. or at 1 p.m. because that's when they're doing the generation. And that sometimes means we're out there in the really bad waves.
Hold on.
But that's the most critical time to answer your question. This time of year, I'd like to monitor it, and I'd like to occasionally look at it. And like I said, they changed their one website up, and I can't find where the hour by hour deal is right now. I can still call that phone number, but do you guys know what happened to their old website?
Yeah, it still works on my phone. It just changed the format of it.
Austin, you might be able to show it on the computer for anybody who doesn't know how. That might be a good thing to show everybody.
Yeah, you can keep talking. I'll see if I can find it.
Because you guys were talking about May. I think for me personally, I think June is one of my favorite times of the year, especially to get a big bite. And it all goes back, at least it seems like to me, when they're pulling like a lot of current and setting up fish in main lake points is one of my favorite times to just hammer on a big fish. That is definitely, I'm a big winter guy. So this winter has hurt me deep down. It's gonna take all spring and all summer to recover. But I'll make my grand recovery. My A-rig bite will come back. I have faith. I know Austin's done throwing it, but that's what I'll be doing. But no, other than that, June is a great time. If you can battle the giant boat waves and the people who will drive between the main lake point you're fishing and the 100 yards you're off, and you're just like, oh, okay, we're doing that. If you can make it through that, then it's all right. So it looks like Austin's got.
June is a phenomenal month, and that's another month that.
Go ahead, Jack.
I'll have to look at this later. June is another month that's kind of a sleeper month. I mean, there's a lot of like people that tournament fish that know it's good, but a lot of your average guys don't really, or they're just now kind of getting used to the idea that June is like the best month of the whole year, really, for fishing. I mean, we get a lot of vacationers, and we're just down here catching 4 and 5 pounders and 3 pounders, and like, man, this is great. When's the best time of year to come? I'm like, you're it. This is it, guys. This is like even around Father's Day is the deal. And they're like, oh, it is? This is the best? I'm like, yeah, this is great. We don't normally catch 3 and 4 and 5 pounders all the time. This is
you're like you don't appreciate it. You don't struggle through the rest of the year.
True.
Yeah, so June's great, and I know we're getting off subject because that's truly summer then, but I mean it is. I mean, that's the great time to come fishing, and it's also a good time to go ahead and catch and release and take a picture of a fish and let it go.
Right.
'Cause that's
Yep.
starting to get to be where that time where they get a little bit more. They're recuperating from the spawn still. That's part of the reason why we're catching them so good because they're
Mhm.
feeding so good, just because they're trying to recuperate.
Yep.
It's kind of like deer hunting in December. Sometimes your best deer hunting days
Yep.
are over a food plot with a muzzleloader late in the year. This year that's when I shot my 2 bucks. This year was real late in the year. It wasn't
100%.
in November when it was really great deer hunting and the rut was going on.
Yep.
They were both later in the year. They were probably recuperating, and they're moving kind of early because of that.
Yep. Don't get me started. We'll be here for another hour.
How long is your Bass and Bob thing? We can make it longer. Nathan, do you have any other questions?
No, I see that we went a little long, but I think that's okay because we had our technical difficulties.
One other question that somebody was asking. This is about winter, but they're curious of how the winter drawdown affects the bass, Jack.
Well, it definitely groups them up. It can make fishing difficult as they're dropping the water level. The biggest thing is it probably affects us fishermen too. Like there's so many boat ramps that we can't use anymore. There's so many docks that you can't, like a certain area that used to hold some fish. Guess what? There's mud back there now. Not necessarily a big deal where you guys are, but certainly as you get up to like the 50 to the 90-mile marker, there's a lot. I mean, there's whole coves that are just completely mud up there that you literally cannot get your boat into because it's mud. Yeah, it definitely affects us as far as that's concerned. But as far as the bass are concerned, it'll help to group up the bass. Like I said, right now they're in some major groups. I want that water level to stop going down. I want it to stabilize as much as possible. It's going to happen here pretty soon. I don't know exactly how far they're going to bring them down the lake. I know in the last couple of days they've dropped it another foot, and that's a big deal. So right now we're at like 656 right now. And so it's dropping a lot. And they waited till we had this huge cold front to do it. And they got to do it. So,
Yeah.
I wish it was a little bit better. I wish they dropped it a little bit more and I wish they just, I don't know. I wish they did a little different than what they do, but they don't care about. They don't want to ask my opinion.
Right.
I wish maybe if they did it some in December. It seems like, lately, the last several years in December, it's 659. It's 659.5. It's super high. It'll be lower in the fall. Then it goes up in early winter, and it'll stay there for a while. And then all of a sudden, it drops like a rock. Here we are talking about March, roughly, a week away or so, and it's still dropping. And so, people are getting excited about fishing. I'm getting excited about March. I'm getting excited about this Toyota. We don't want to be dealing with these problems, and now they're dropping the tar out of it. And, there's going to be a lot of people looking to go fishing over the next several weeks, and they can't put their boat in the water because the water level is too low.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think we are at a pretty good spot to kind of put a bow on this thing, Jack. Where can people get a hold of you if they were looking to book a trip?
Well, my websites are the easiest way to get in touch with me. FishingLakeOfTheOzarks.com is great. I've also got another website that's not quite as popular. It's LakeOfTheOzarksFishingGuide.com. I'm usually in touch with Bass and Bob. I'm on his website a lot. I'm on Facebook a lot. I'm on a lot of the Lake of the Ozarks crappie pages and bass pages, and I try to be out there a lot and just helping out people if they got a question. I've got a good relationship with Margaritaville Resort here, and that's a great big resort if you're looking for a place with like a big family kind of group or a corporate outing. And then I've also got a relationship with Point Randall Resort down by you guys, which is a great family-run resort. If you're looking for something small and looking for like a small fishing resort, those guys do a great job down there. So I'm usually around these resorts a lot, and just email me, text me, call me. 573-434-2570 is my phone number. I got to take out a lot of people. And right now, lately, I've been canceling trips because of all this nasty weather. So I'm going to have to make up for it. That is, it's February. When people book trips this time of year, they understand that things happen. Snow happens, and
weather dependent.
That's awesome. So if you're looking to book a trip at Lake of the Ozarks, give Jack's Guide Service a try. I guarantee he's going to get you on some fish. So with that said, we just want to again remind everybody we are less than 2 weeks away from our final tournament at Lake of the Ozarks at Kaufman Beach on March 1st. We hope you consider fishing it. It is a series, but it's open to anybody, open buddy tournament. Just because you didn't fish the other 4 doesn't mean you can't fish this one. So we hope you guys consider fishing it. And we haven't said anything about it yet. But as long as the weather is good, we are planning on doing a little barbecue afterwards at the ramp. Thanks to one of our lovely sponsors who's going to be helping out. That's I believe that's Dave over at the Sportsman Lodge at Rocky Top. We're in talks with that. So come on out and do some fishing and then have some brats, burgers, and hot dogs at the end of the tournament and kind of talk with everybody and kind of see how everybody did. And then obviously we got,
one.
Go ahead.
Last year you guys had some really good prizes. Can you tell everybody what prizes you got this year?
You want to take it, Austin?
Yeah. So let me actually go to our website to get the actual amount so I don't talk about the prizes incorrectly. But so this year for overall points, so this is if you're fishing all the tournaments, you get points for every time that you come out. First place wins an additional $1,500. Second place wins an additional $1,000. Third place is $750. Fourth place is $500, and fifth place is $250.
And
then
that's really good, guys.
Yeah,
we are completely all of our how am I trying to say that? All of our sponsorship goes towards our prizes at the end. So that's why Austin and we work pretty hard trying to gather sponsors throughout the year upcoming. And we budget, and all of the sponsorship money goes towards the prizes at the end. And then everything else, obviously you can win the cash for that daily tournament. But if you fish the whole series, you'll be eligible for the point standings at the end. If you're in the top 5 spots, a little extra for the bank at the end of the day if you're in there. So
it's that's more than just a little.
Yeah,
that's pretty healthy there, boys.
We try not to, we're not taking anybody's sponsor money trying to pocket it for ourselves or anything. We want to give it back to our anglers and people who come out and fish and help support us or whatever, and just enjoy fishing and brave through some of these cold winter tournaments. I think you deserve a little extra payout for that if you perform well, especially. So
that's just how we try to run things. If anybody doesn't know, it's a 90% payback on all of our tournaments. Kind of like Austin said, we're not trying to pocket or make any extra money off it. We take just enough to make the tournaments efficient to run, and everything else goes back to the anglers. And that's what we try to make it all about, is to just make it a good tournament for a lot of guys to come out. And if you follow me and Austin at all or any of our videos, we are not professionals. We really typically get kicked in the butt a lot, but we sure love being out there and doing our best to fish with everybody else.
Well, there's some similarities between you guys and Bass and Bob. And Bass and Bob has been very, for the last 10, 12 years has been a very good success on Lake of the Ozarks. So that's good that I'm seeing some similarities between you guys and him. He doesn't have a big ego. His tournaments they've got a great payback. You guys are doing well. You guys are going to continue.
Thanks, Jack. We appreciate that.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. And with that all said, Jack, we just want to thank you for coming on and talking with us. A lot of good information and conversation was had and shared tonight. Thanks for working through our technical difficulties, whether it be the snow or whatever it was. And yes, Austin, I see you holding up the beanie. So if you haven't already and you're still somehow watching or listening to the podcast and you have not yet and you want to, go to our socials, whether that be Midwest Outdoor Experience Facebook page, Instagram page, and comment that you want a free beanie. And we have 10 to give out. And the first 10 that comment will make sure it gets to you. And it's completely free. So we got to get rid of them. And it supports our sponsors over at Hillerman and Associates insurance. So
Yeah, and they're nice beanies too.
yeah. So with that all said, we are going to wrap up this February podcast, and we're going to do it again sometime in March. So to look out for that, be watching and follow along on our socials, both on Facebook and on Instagram is where we have been making announcements for the podcast. We're shooting for one a month. So hopefully we can do it again next month. So until then, we want to thank everybody for watching and tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.
See you on the next one, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.